Testing. If you are here, thank you for joining us. We will start in just a few moments. If you Welcome to the Cosmology and Mythology of Peruvian Curanderas Masterclass. Brought to you by Pleiadian Institute. Only one who devotes oneself to a cause with the whole strength and soul can be a true master. For this reason, mastery demands all of a person. Curanderas in Latin America are deeply connected to the earth, the spiritual world, and the cosmos in their healing practices. Their indigenous traditions teach us about the integration of plant medicine, spiritual ritual, and ceremony in our healing work. This integrated, holistic approach teaches us how they provided support for the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health of the people that they served. Curandera practices are often passed down through generations and are deeply intertwined with the cultural and spiritual traditions of the regions where the curanderas live. Curandera approaches vary across regions, but many core practices are used across the world. We are studying the healing practices of curanderas to learn how they create space for healing in ritual and ceremony through energy, through their connection to spirit, and through plant medicine. The healing practices of curanderas are known as traditional healing or traditional medicine. Traditional healing is a term that's used globally to describe the healing practices of indigenous cultures. And this is a practice that is used all over the world and is rapidly growing. Traditional healing encompasses culturally grounded health systems like herbal remedies, spiritual ceremonies, and community-centered rituals that treat the mind, body, and spirit. We are focused in this masterclass on Peru, and originally my goal was to provide an overview of the curanderas in Latin America. But as I sat down to research, I realized that the curanderas practice in different parts of Latin America in different ways. There are different languages, there are different cultural roots that warrant each of the groups having their own separate masterclass or understanding of how these different subcultures kind of came together to form what we could describe as the holistic curandera practice of Latin America. Latin America includes over 20 countries and territories where they're specifically defined by the Romance languages, Spanish, Portuguese, and French. And these languages predominate in this area. It spans from Mexico to Central America and includes the Caribbean, all the way down to the tip of South America. Latin America is not a continent, but a region defined by culture and language, dominated by Brazil and Mexico. As I mentioned, each region has its own cultural influences that significantly shape the practices of the curanderas. And we will dive into the other Latin American cultural groups in future masterclasses. Today, we are focused on Peru. However, it's important to see that this entire area is deeply rooted in the practice of traditional medicine. In Latin America, the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, their regional office for the Americas, which has the most up-to-date statistics on the practices of traditional medicine in Latin America. They report that 74% of the population in Chile and 40% of the population in Colombia use traditional medicine. So it's safe to say, even though we don't have the statistics from Peru, that the practices that we're going to be learning about, the practices that the curanderas have used for thousands of years, are still heavily practiced today in the area. In this masterclass, we're focusing in on Peru, and it's important to understand the relationship of Peru with the rest of the world. So this little map you may have seen before, because this is one of my favorite maps. This shows you the earth chakras. So just like our body has a set of chakras, so does the earth. Except within our earth, the chakras are constantly moving. So think like how the tectonic plates are moving, the continents are moving, right? They're moving very slowly over hundreds of thousands of years. And as the continents and the tectonic plates shift, so do the chakras. And Latin America, specifically Lake Titicaca, which you can see here is marked on this map, which is located in Peru, is currently the second chakra of the earth. So that is our sacral chakra, our Svatisana, the chakra that is connected to our creativity and our sexuality, our ability to express ourselves emotionally. The earth chakras are in a constant state of motion. So although Latin America is currently the second earth chakra, the global center of creativity and sexuality, by the end of the Aquarian age, which is approximately 2,500 years from now, it is determined that the chakras will shift and Latin America will be home to the fourth chakra, which is the heart chakra of the earth, the global center of unconditional love and compassion. So you can see that the fourth chakra now is located in Glastonbury. And if it follows this trajectory, what you can see is that the chakras are moving along these earth ley lines. And so the fourth chakra will move down here to the second chakra. So what that means is that we are constantly in a state of flux. But right now, at this exact moment in time, this area that we're studying is transitioning from our second chakra to our fourth chakra. And as I was researching this masterclass, which has taken me a long time, specifically since the beginning of this year is when I started, I was enamored by the Super Bowl performance that happens this year. So I'm going to give you a link to this performance when the masterclass is over, but you can also just Google the Super Bowl performance from 2026. This is Bad Bunny. He is the number one Latin American artist in the world, and his home is Puerto Rico, which is Latin America. And this performance that he put on was this stunning, artistic, deeply healing performance that highlighted the Latin American countries as this center of sexuality, creativity, and also unconditional love. And this performance really stuck out to me, especially in understanding, like, how does this manifest when the earth chakras shift like this? How do we see this happening on earth? And I see this depicted beautifully in this Super Bowl performance. So I recommend when you watch it, if Spanish is not your native language, you change the captions to English, because he sings completely in Spanish. But when you read in English what he's saying, there is a profundity to the poetry that he speaks through his lyrics. It is on one hand deeply sexual, erotic, but on the other hand, what you can see in this bottom picture here, there is a sign behind him that says, "The only thing more powerful than hate is love." Because when this performance took place, we're in the middle of this demonization of immigrants in the United States. And this performance took place in San Francisco. So he's in the United States and he's representing the Latin American culture. And he highlights all of the different countries that are part of the Americas, that are part of Latin America. We also you can see behind him in this image, these grasses. So each of these grasses is connected to a human being. So that was how they put this big field of really plant life behind him, which shows the deep connection of these Latin American countries to the earth, to the medicine of the earth, and how that is a bridge from the full expression of our creativity and our sexuality to the full expression of unconditional love for all human beings. And this is not just embodied in this performance, but I feel as though what the performance speaks to on a larger level is that this shift into a place of deep unconditional love for all inhabitants of the planet is being highlighted in the Latin American countries at this time. And so learning from these countries, learning about their indigenous healing practices becomes even more important to us as healers who are in our own personal ways ushering in this shift to unconditional love within our bodies, our minds, and our healing practices. So we are going to begin exploring where this all started by looking at the mythology and the cosmology of the Peruvian people. The mythology and the cosmology gives us insight into the worldview of Peruvian curanderas. And so we begin with Viracocha. In the beginning was the creator and the supreme deity, whose name was Viracocha. Viracocha rose from Lake Titicaca during the time of darkness to bring forth light. According to the myth, he made the sun, known as Inti, the moon, known as Mama Kila, and the stars. The sun, Inti, and the moon, Mama Kila, are siblings. So they are both descendants of Viracocha, and they are also celestial bodies. Viracocha made man by breathing into stones. His first creation were giants without brains that displeased him. So he destroyed them with a flood and made human beings who were better than the giants, who were made in the images of the gods from smaller stones. After creating the humans, they were sent all over the world. He then traveled across the Andes as a bearded, white-robed man, breathing life into humanity, teaching them civilization and performing miracles. Afterward, he famously walked across the Pacific Ocean, promising that he would one day return. Here you see ceramic vessels, which are artifacts from the Peruvian highlands that depict Viracocha as a bearded man. So out of this myth, we have Inti, who is known as the father-son, the son of the creator god Viracocha, and also the goddess of the sea, Mama Cocha. So Inti's parents are Viracocha, the creator god, and Mama Cocha, the goddess of the sea. Inti was worshipped as both a divine ancestor and a spiritual father. He was the primary source of light, warmth, protection, prosperity, and order. Here in this image, you see an Incan emperor worshipping Inti in a temple in the 1500s. So this tradition of worshipping the god, the sun god Inti, existed for thousands of years in this area. Pachamama is the mother goddess who rules space and time. She is both form and formless, and she's described as a field that connects all things. She's considered an omnipresent deity with creative power, capable of sustaining life in the cosmos. Her shrines are hallowed rocks, or the bowls. A bowl is like the hole that you see in the tree trunk. So the bowls of trees are made as shrines to her. And her artists envision her as a woman bearing harvests. So she's seen as form in the form of woman, but she's also formless. The original language of the people that inhabited Peru was formed the understanding of how we know Pachamama. Their language was Quechua, and the four cosmological Quechua principles, which were water, earth, sun, and moon, claim Pachamama as their prime origin. So although Pachamama contained the earth, she also contained the sun, the moon, and the water. Pachamama is a field then, a field of consciousness. She is also a supreme mother goddess who provides material and spiritual sustenance to all human beings. Ancestral traditions recount that Pachamama is one of the primordial forces that govern nature. Alongside her are Mama Cocha, the goddess of water, Mama Huera, the goddess of wind, and Mama Nina, the goddess of fire. Together, they form the vital cycle that sustains Que Pacha. Que Pacha is the word for the earthly world. In Quechua, the word Pacha means earth, but it also means universe, and it means time. And what this means is that she exists in multiple dimensions, on earth, within the universe, and as time itself. And through her, we experience time on earth. Therefore, she is both in the earth and of spirit. She is a bridge between humans and the divine essence of the universe. Pachamama guides us to reflect on our place in the cycle of nature. Her spirit inspires respect and gratitude for our home on earth. Honoring Pachamama is to live in harmony with the earth, is to live in reverence of the spirit of the earth, in every stone, in every plant, in every body of water, in fire, in the air itself, and in the dirt beneath our feet. For the Andean people, Pachamama is the weaver of time and existence. Her spirit is present in every sunrise, in every plant, and in every mountain, and in the very earth beneath our feet. The Quechua lived for thousands of years in the Andes region that included Peru, but they left no written records. Much of what we know about them came from mummification, from tombs, and from the Inca, who absorbed much of their cosmology. The best way to understand the universe from the perspective of the Quechua, then, is the Incan trilogy. And the Incan trilogy shows us three major worlds. So the Incan civilization was the most modern of the Quechua, and they have left us the most records. And what we know about their cosmology is they believed in this trilogy of our experience as humans. And the first part of that trilogy is the heavens, Hanan Pacha. Then we have the earth, Ke Pacha. And finally, the underworld, Uku Pacha. The Incan people believed that the harmony between the worlds was maintained through the people on earth and through our mutual care for all elements of the universe. The gods resided in Hanan Pacha, known as the heavens. Hanan Pacha was also known as the realm of the sun. The humans lived in the earthly world, Ke Pacha. Ke Pacha translates to the world of the living, since it contained mankind, plants, animals, and other creations of the gods. Uku Pacha was the underworld, also known as the inner world, which included all of the spirits of the dead, our ancestors, the unconscious, and the origin of new life. Uka Pacha is a fertile space for renewal and rebirth. It is where our deepest desires, fears, and memories live. So we have Inti, known as the Father Sun, the son of the creator god Viracocha, and the goddess of the sea, Mama Cocha. And Inti acts as a connector between the worlds. And this is depicted in what's known as the Shakana. So the Shakana is the Andean cross. It's a sacred geometric symbol used by ancient Andean civilizations and the Incas. It translates to bridge in Quechua, and it features a stepped symmetrical cross with 12 points and a circular center. It represents the cosmos, the constellations, and the connection between our spiritual and physical worlds. It has a circular opening at the middle that acts as an access or portal linking the different cosmic levels and symbolizing the center of the cross symbolized Cusco, which was the capital city of Peru and what was known as the navel of the Incan Empire. The Shakana is also known as the Incan cross, and this ancient stepped cross symbol includes the three realms of existence. And the word Shakana not only means bridge, but it also means to cross over. And we're going to look really deeply at this cross and how it helps us to understand our own world a little later on. But now we're going to dive into how healing evolved in Peru in this time that was recorded before the Incan civilization rose and after. The healing of history in Peru spans thousands of years, and it's rooted in a deep shamanic connection to nature. We are starting in 9000 BC because that is when the first records have emerged that give us insight into the healing practices of these cultures. Although civilizations had flourished and healing was practiced since prehistoric times, it was in 9000 BC when the first nomadic hunter-gatherers began to create settlements. This evidence of the settlements arises out of the practice of mummification. Peru holds a rich 7,000-year history of mummification, so this predates Egyptian mummification practices, with techniques that, like those of the Chinchorro people, which you can see an evidence of one of these earliest mummies here, who created painted, clay-covered, and wigged mummies, often found with goods like textiles, food, and pottery, and symbolic representations of healing practices. The ancient Peruvians had no written language. Most information about the Peruvians is from the examination of mummies and the funeral bundles that surrounded them, and from their pottery. Medical procedures are also depicted on these ancient Peruvian mummies and the ceramic pottery, as well as reflections of almost every daily activity. Mummification was practiced by numerous cultures in what is now Peru, and was a practice in which the living would remember and remain connected with the dead. Some people kept mummies in their homes or brought them to festivals. Others brought offerings of food or drink to their loved ones' graves. Another common practice was trepanation. Trepanation was a surgical operation where a hole was made in the skull to treat problems related to mental health, brain health, and also head injuries. Many archaeological findings indicate that this surgery has a long history, dating back to this earliest period of recorded history, 9000 BC. This type of cranial surgery was highly advanced, and it was indicated that they had a great skill in this type of surgery, because what we can see from the skulls that had this trepanation done is there were many recoveries after skull trepanation. So it was a surgery that was used for healing and that was successful during this time period. We then move to the period of 5000 to 1800 BC. And this is when the first known civilization in Peru emerged within the sacred city of Caral. This is the oldest known urban settlement in the Americas. So not just Latin America, but all of the Americas, South America and North America. We find this sacred city of Caral being one of the first, urban settlement. The site, which you can see here, this is an actual image of Caral in our modern day. The site covers 150 acres and consists of impressive monumental structures, including 7 7 large pyramids, an amphitheater, and various residential districts, all reflecting advanced architectural and urban planning skills. Here's another actual photo from Corral. You see here something like an obelisk, a stone that guides you out to where the pyramids would have been. Archaeological excavations have uncovered healing was a holistic practice that integrated religion, spiritual faith, ceremonies, nature, and extensive botanical knowledge. Physical and spiritual wellness were inseparable. Their society was organized around their spiritual practices, music, and communal harmony. Healing involved rituals performed by shamans or priests atop pyramids and in sunken circular plazas to restore balance between the community and the natural world. We now move to 100 BC, where we begin to see the records of the use of plant medicine. Chemical analysis of the hair from 22 mummified individuals in southern Peru revealed the earliest known use of plant medicine for healing, including ayahuasca and San Pedro, dating to about 100 BC. What we know about these sacred plants comes from the mummies that were unearthed in a religious center around 100 BC. So the earliest records come from using plant medicine as a means of healing connected to spirit. We have here pictures of two of the most commonly used, or the plant medicines that were identified in those mummified individuals from 100 BC was ayahuasca, which is a medicinal concoction made of 2 different plants that come from a vine that is known to grow prolifically in the region, specifically within the Amazon. And you see this vine here in the right-hand picture. And then we have San Pedro, which is known as the master plant of the Andes. San Pedro is a cactus, and so the medicine of San Pedro is derived from a single plant. You see the cactus here on the left-hand side. You also see it growing up here on the right-hand side. Ayahuasca is viewed as a feminine teacher, while San Pedro is seen as a masculine ally. San Pedro is described as a daytime wander through a serene landscape, offering clarity and connection with the surrounding area. In contrast, ayahuasca is described as a nighttime voyage, guiding us through profound introspections and emotional cleansing. What we know about San Pedro and ayahuasca is that these plants require extensive preparation. So for those who are preparing San Pedro, which is the plant medicine that I'm most familiar with, this is a process that takes days, from collecting the plant to an multiple day process of preparing the plant for a sacred journey. And it's during this time that this relationship with the plant is developed. So it's not just ingesting the plant, but it is in the gathering of the plant from the land, the preparation of the plant in the healer's, we'll call it kitchen, and then the delivery of the plant medicine in ceremony that we see the healing taking place. And if you've ever put together a meal that took all day, if there's any dish that you've ever cooked before, where you had to get all of the different ingredients the day before, you had to prep the meal, you had to cook the meal all day. What you know going through that process is that the meal itself influences you just as much as you influence it. And so as you are preparing this cactus, you're not just preparing it. It's not like just an external process where you're putting ingredients together, but the cactus is communicating to you through that preparation. And so the healer herself was shaped by the process of preparing the plant medicine, just as much as the plant medicine influenced the people that moved through the ceremonies. And it's this deep interconnected relationship with nature that the work of the curanderas is grounded in. Now we are going to progress into what would be more modern times. So this is AD, which means we are in the modern period of the Peruvian highlands. And during this time, we see the Nazca cultures emerge, famous for what is known as the Nazca lines. These lines vary in complexity. There are hundreds of simple lines and geometric shapes, but more than 70 are zoomorphic designs, including a hummingbird, an arachnid, a fish, condor, a heron, a monkey, a lizard, a dog, a cat, and a human. Other shapes include trees and flowers. Some of the Nazca lines form shapes that are best seen from the air, so that need to be seen from at least 16,000 feet above, although some are also visible from the surrounding foothills and other high places. The shapes are usually made from one continuous line, and the largest ones are about 370 meters long. So because of the isolation of this area and the dry, windless, stable climate of the plateau, the lines have mostly been preserved naturally. And they are still visible today. Archaeologists, historians, and many others who have studied these lines proposed that the figures were designed as astronomical markers on the horizon to show where the sun and other celestial bodies rose on significant dates. And this is all going to come together with the emergence of the Incan Empire, which happened between 1438 and 1532. The Inca were from Peru. They rose from the Peruvian highlands in the Cusco region, which is the capital of Peru, around the 13th century, which is about 1400. And they grew to rule the largest empire in pre-Columbian America. So they rose up, and this empire that they created before the Spanish colonized South America, this Incan Empire was the largest civilization that existed. It stretched across the Andes Mountains, and it stretched beyond Peru throughout the Pacific coast of South America. Indigenous healing in Incan society is described based on written documents of the Spanish conquerors and from archaeological findings. Publication of these documents happened many years after the conquest. So what that means is much of what we know came from the colonists, the people who colonized this area. And it's important to note that there's a lot of prejudice that these Spanish colonists had. because the Spanish came from a society that was heavily rooted in religion, that saw magic, that saw interaction with the unseen world as inferior, wrong, and or the work of the devil. So this is particularly true for the Catholic priests. And during the time of the Spanish colonization, there were Catholic priests that came along with the Spanish conquerors that did a lot of the record keeping. And so much of the record keeping that we have comes from these Catholic priests. Because Incan medicine, as well as the medical practitioners from this time, freely expressed this belief in the unseen world and what you might describe as magic, the reports were undoubtedly skewed. So what we know, therefore, is being told through the lens of the colonizers, the conquerors. However, it's the only information that we have, so it's valuable in understanding the way that our ancestors lived. However, we have to recognize that all of the information that we have is likely skewed and presented through this lens where they downplayed the power and purpose of the Incan relationship with the unseen world. The Quechua people are the people who speak the Quechua languages originated in Peru. And although most Quechua speakers are native to Peru, they also spread out throughout Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, and Argentina. The original Incas were an ethnic group of the Quechua speakers from the Cusco region. And so the Incas grew from a local tribe, and Quechua describes their language. And the Incas then grew into this massive empire, and they made Quechua their native tongue. So Quechua was the official language of the entire empire. And this is important because we're going to look at this map together. This is a representation of the Incan worldview, but we can look at it even in a bigger sense as a representation of the Quechuan, the view of the Quechua people, the view of the indigenous people of Peru. This entire map, it was in Quechua, the Quechua language, and I translated it word for word. And so this is not my native language, obviously. I also don't speak Spanish natively, and there is a lot of overlap between Quechua and Spanish. But once I started translating this map, it blew my mind. And it just connected everything in a way that I knew that I had to share. So this is a lot of information I'm going to present with this translation. But I think what you're going to find is that it brings everything that we're talking about together in this beautiful way. So this map, then, this representation of the Incan worldview, I'm going to go over it with you from top to bottom. And I'm going to translate each of these words so that you can see what this map is trying to show you. So at the top here, we have Viracocha. It says that top, the word there where you see Viracocha is where we're going to start. And what that translates into is the Lord or God Viracocha is the foundation and ruler of the universe. Underneath Viracocha, we see Inti, which we know is the sun god. Underneath the sun god, we see the bright star or the morning star, also known as the evening star, also known as the Venus star. And underneath that, we have this sentence that says, grandfather spirit. This is the morning star. So it's like they are acknowledging the morning star and acknowledging grandfather spirit, speaking to grandfather spirit. Underneath the morning star, we have the words dry and summer. We also have, which is sucho verano, we also have the word catachile. Catachile it's known as a sacred star, and the constellation often described as the Pleiades. It's also known as a celestial llama or a heavenly female llama, which is accompanied by her offspring. So we have the Pleiades here. Underneath the Pleiades, we have Rayo, which is a ray. So we see the Pleiades is just represented by this single star. However, there's all of these other stars here. So there is like a connection between the single star and this family of stars. We have the ray, then we have the arc of the sky underneath the ray, Arco del Cielo, which looks like, to me, a rainbow. So we have the ray coming out of the rainbow. Underneath that, the god of thunder, lightning, and rain. And then Pachamama, which is representative of the world or the earth. Coming out of Pachamama, we have the Pilcomayo River, which is an actual river in the Andes that flows 1,100 miles in Central South America. So that would have been a major body of water. We have that water flowing out of the earth. Underneath that, you see los ojos, the eyes of everything is what that says. And underneath that, this space here, which is like the cross hatching, that can be understood as the underworld, but it's called the turned upside down world, and it represents total chaos. So what I see here is an embodiment of what we are learning from in all of our teachings of the rays, the sacred mystery schools, that the rays emanate from the source at the center of all that is. And the Pleiades, the sacred star systems, are transmitting sacred knowledge of these rays. And this map here really shows that very clearly. So now let's come to the other side of the map, and we see the very top, you see that cross of stars. It says called Orko Rara, means 3 stars all the same. And this refers to what they called the 3 Marys of Orion's belt. These are 3 stars in the Orion constellation, which are 3 bright, evenly aligned stars that cross the sky, which the Quechua people described as the 3 Marys, sitting at the very top of the map, indicating this divine feminine, this light that was holding everything together. Underneath that, you see this kind of paragraph here on the left-hand side. And what that says is the sign of the world teaching, or the sign of the Totona. The Totona was the world maker. It was a creator figure associated with Viracocha, the Incan creator god. So Totonapa is often described as a bearded wandering messenger who traveled the Andes teaching agriculture, healing the sick, and preaching. And so it's showing that the 3 stars are signs of the world teaching, or signs of the Creator God. And under that it says, be it male, be it female. Let this be male, let this be female. So the sacred interconnection between the divine feminine and the divine masculine. Underneath that, it says, it is the symbol to remember him. This is a phrase that was used as a caption for the cosmological diagram in the Sun Temple in Cusco, known as the Sun of Suns, the creator of the universe. So this sign here, the sign of the divine feminine, overseeing the divine masculine, was a symbol to remember the Creator God. And I love this because it shows us what I feel I already know. In Latin America, the divine feminine is so alive, so present. And here we see this unity of the divine masculine and feminine, and how the feminine is holding it all together, but it's pointing to the masculine as the Creator God. Underneath this, we have Choque Chinche. And if I am mispronouncing any of this, I apologize. And if you are a native Quechua speaker, or if you are a native Spanish speaker and you see any errors here, please let me know and correct me. Although I checked and double checked and triple checked all these words, there's a lot here. There's a lot of symbolism that comes through in these ancient languages that may be missed in direct translation, but I studied a lot of the symbolism and included it here for you. So you see the Choque Chinche, which is this, what really looks like a star here to me. And it's described as the Jaguar constellation, also the planet Venus. And underneath that, Apache Ururi, which is another word for Venus. But this is Venus as the evening star. So there were different words that described Venus. So you could either describe Venus as the morning star or the evening star. And you see the morning star translation on the left side of this map and the evening star translation on the right side. This phrase was literally written beside a star symbol opposite the morning star to specifically identify that Venus was appearing in the evening. So we see Venus here really honored as a star that was transcending night and day, present in both morning and evening. Underneath that, we have the words spring, water source, and hail, cloud, winter, fog, and the word pokoi, which I believe from my research was a name of a surname. So a name that was a human name that depicted a family, a group of people that had that last name. And all of these words in the middle show us the connection between the spiritual world and the seasons, the elements of earth. And then we have underneath that the jaguar, or the spotted tiger, which is the word Chuqui Chinche. So right here underneath what looks like that jaguar there, the Chuqui Chinche was worshipped as a powerful, spotted, astral god, often associated with a jaguar or mountain lion that commanded all other tigers, bears, and pumas. It also represented duality and was sometimes revered as the protector of the third gender in Andean culture. The third gender would be the humans who embodied both the female and male attributes. Underneath that, we see the arbol, the tree, and the mummified bodies of Incan royalty and ancestors, which is that word underneath the arbol. So it kind of shows there that the mummified bodies of the Incan royalty and ancestors are planted beneath the roots of the tree. And then the next translation I have here is of the middle. So if we go into the middle, we see Saramama. So we see this cross. This cross is opposite to the cross at the top, but similar. And remember, this cross at the top represents the divine feminine. The cross in the center, we see the maize mother. That is Saramama, the goddess of grain and maize. And then we see the Incan goddess of the cocoa plant represented. And then here we see in Mama. So you have Saramama and Mama, the goddesses of the earth. Underneath that, we have Hombre and Mujer, which are woman and man. So here there is this beautiful interconnectedness of the divine feminine and masculine, the cosmos, the earth, the humans, in which shows us their reverence for all creation. And this formed the foundation of their understanding of health and healing, was this interconnected universe. Here we see the Incan, this was like the symbol that was on the Incan flag. This is two crowning snakes united by a rainbow positioned over the sun. Here, these snakes, also known as serpents, represented healing. The rainbow, which we know represents the rays, the healing powers of the rays, which hovered over the sun, which we know was worshipped as a god. This was used as the Incan royal coat of arms and shows us this deep connection to not only the earth, but spirit and the healing strength, power that rose up out of their connection to the earth. Disease during this time was seen as a result of a disturbed relationship with supernatural forces. Spanish colonel administrator and jurist Polo de Ondegardo, which you see a picture of right here, left this report of the Incas that said they were of the opinion that all diseases were a consequence of the sins they had committed, and as a remedy they made sacrifices, and furthermore they made confessions in nearly all provinces. This confession they also made when their children, wives, or cacique went ill. Confession was primarily practiced in the time of disease, because cleansing sin meant that the diseased person would recover. And so the Incas practiced a confession, which was made to specific priests. However, in some parts of the empire, a confession was made to what was described as sorcerers. And they were confessing their sin because they believed that sin was a cause of disease, and that making a confession was considered as an effective means of curing disease. Now, remember that most of the people who gave us this information were not interested in the relationship between sin and disease. They were more interested in confession, because where we're getting this information from, if you remember, is the Catholic priests. And the Catholic priests were well acquainted with the practice of confession, and they were surprised that the Incas had a comparable custom. So there's a lot of information on the confession practices of the Incas. may or may not have been central to their healing practices. What we know is that it was absolutely highlighted by the Catholic priests that reported on these practices. And so we have a lot of information about confession to the gods, and when this took place and why this took place. For the Incas, nearly all events, including diagnosis and prediction of the outcome of diseases, were preceded by divination. The Incas had many different diviners of different types. The use of psychoactive substances, including San Pedro and ayahuasca, facilitated the contact with supernatural forces who were thought to give information about future events and also the cause and course of disease. They also answered questions about whether a sick person would recover or die. Divination was also practiced to determine the succession of the rulers, to determine the time of war, and for the finding of criminals, to determine the time of sowing and harvest, and many other aspects of divine life. And so for that purpose, there were many different types of diviners. And that word in a modern term might be an intuitive, a psychic, someone who is seeing into unseen worlds. The Inca believed that to cure a disease, the disturbed relation with supernatural forces had to be restored. All cures were accompanied by offerings and prayers because of the belief that supernatural forces, and by supernatural forces, I want you to think back to that map. Supernatural to them was the gods, the cosmos, the celestial bodies that they believed governed their universe. So they gave offerings and prayers to those celestial bodies, believing them to be involved in the cause of disease, diagnosis, and prognosis. And these were all determined by divination. Healers were generally older in age and highly experienced. They also had little knowledge about the nature of disease and their specific names. They didn't know the cause or the effects of the ailments. Their primary expertise was in the healing of the disease. Specifically, the use of medicinal plants was a main part of their treatment of diseases. They used plants with prayers and with incantations. They were accomplished herbalists. They cured with simple herbs, and they taught of the virtues of the plants. They not only created medicine in the form of tinctures and salves, but they also made fermentations, perfumes. You could see many different depictions of how the plants were used in medicines on their clay vessels. We have here an actual image of what was called a ritual effigy. This is from 1470. This is called an effigy. It is a small stone figurine of a llama. Also known as, it also could have been an alpaca. These were common, and they were most likely used as devotional objects. They were often buried to bring protection and prosperity and to bring fertility. These effigies had cylindrical cavities in it, which is like the hole that you see here in the center of the little figurine, that were filled with offerings to the gods in the form of a mixture that included animal fat, cocoa leaves, maize kernels, and seashells, which you can see here represented like the spirit of the gods and the goddesses that they were honoring. The Inca civilization was the largest empire in the Americas and the largest in the world during its peak in the early 1500s. It was during the Incan Empire that this largest civilization grew. The Incas built their empire in Peru, with their capital city of Cusco serving as the heart and the Andes Mountains. Machu Picchu, which is what you're looking at right now, is a 15th century Incan citadel, and today is one of the most important archaeological sites in the world. It was built without wheels or iron tools. Machu Picchu is known for its incredible engineering and architectural features, perfectly cut, interlocking stones, blocks that fit together so tightly that a knife blade cannot fit between them. The construction was also designed to be earthquake resistant. So what we see here is their use of their spiritual knowledge transcended what we know to be possible at this time and was anchored into the physical structure that they built on the earth. When the Spanish came to conquer all of Peru and the Andean highlands, they never found Machu Picchu. So this is what has allowed it to remain intact. The site was designed to, very much like the Egyptian pyramids, to align with the sun, the moon, and the surrounding mountain peaks. There is a famous stone known as the Intihuatana stone that acts as a solar clock or calendar that aligns precisely with the sun during solstices. Machu Picchu is situated between two mountains and surrounded by cliffs and a dense cloud forest with incredible biodiversity, including over 300 species of orchids. The site includes over 150 buildings, ranging from temples to residential areas, and supported by sophisticated architectural terraces that also prevent landslides. This was all created by hand without what we know as like modern building methods. So this brings us to the present time and where the people of Peru have come since then. Peru currently exists at the center of what is known as a health axis. This spans the northern coastal region of South America. This region is one of the few in the world that has maintained continuous plant-based traditions since 1000 BC. So what this is telling you is that these traditions that go all the way back to 9000 BC, many thousands of years ago, are still practiced today. And this specific region is one of the few regions where we see this happening. Nearly 60% of Peru today is covered by the Amazon rainforest, making it the second largest portion of the Amazon basin after Brazil. So it is incredibly biodiverse, one of the most biodiverse locations on the earth. The flora of Peru, meaning the plant life, represents 10% of all flora on earth. So 10% of plant life on earth exists in this area. In all Peruvian ethnic groups, plant knowledge is part of a natural identity and part of their value system. It contains 78 of the 107 ecoregions of the world. An ecoregion is a large area of land or water that shares similar climate, soil, geology, plant and animal communities. An ecoregion uses natural boundaries instead of political lines to help scientists study and protect the environment. It's thought that only 60% of the Peruvian flora has been studied, with 14,000 species described as medicinal. So even though they've only studied about half, a little more than half of the flora from this area, they've found 1,400 species described as medicinal. So the people of this area, the curanderas of this area, have throughout generations been impacted by this rich plant life. And in this way, the ancient civilizations of Peru teach us of the interconnectedness of the physical world, the spiritual world, and the cosmos, the celestial bodies. They teach us of the origins of healing, the importance of our connection to the plants that are coming up out of the earth for healing, and the importance of creating a spiritual harmony as a means of healing our physical bodies, and of practice. And they teach us of the practice of treating illness as a disruption of balance between humanity, nature, and the divine. This masterclass is part of our core teaching in all of our certification programs. It specifically comes from our Healers of the Past 101 course, which you can explore at pleiadianinstitute.org/courses. This course is a core course, a foundational course in every single one of our integrative healing programs, which you can explore on our website. This is the first in a 3-part series. So here we just looked at the history of the Peruvian Curanderas so that you can understand the rich connection that they had over thousands of years to the land, to the cosmos, and to the intervention of the connection between spirit and health. The next masterclass in this series, we're going to go deeper into the healing practices of Peruvian curanderas by looking specifically at the ceremonies and the rituals that they performed. All of the references for this masterclass, these resources will be available to you inside of your course portal. If you're a student, if you're not a student, you can take a screenshot of these references if you want to go deeper into any of these topics. We also have all of our image references here, so you can look back. We just took a tour through Peru. I wanted to really bring the place alive for you, so hopefully you feel more connected to the land and the people that we are studying. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am grateful for your presence here with me. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the history of the curanderas of Peru, their mythology and cosmology, and I look forward to connecting with you in our next masterclass. Namaste.